Hey there, I'm Jill Griffin, and this is the Career Refresh Podcast. Hey everyone, this is Jill Griffin. I'm the host of the Career Refresh Podcast, and I am here today with my dear friend, Dr. Lee Koles, and we are talking about trends that we are seeing in the workplace. We did an episode late last year around the trends that we were seeing for 2022, and this is what we're seeing so far in 2023. We're both taking different lenses into the trends that we see. We're talking both about what leadership might see and what leadership might be doing. And then also, you might be in leadership, but the role that you have as an employee. So really thinking through as you listen to this, depending on which hat you want to put on and which place you want to be thinking through how to work through various trends and how to make the best of these trends, just know that we're talking both to the employee and also to leadership. And with that, I welcome my friend, Lee.
Hi, Jill. It's so good to be back with you a year later. New trends to talk about.
New trends.
Yeah. And for those of you who are just meeting me for the first time, my name is Lee Koles. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. And like Jill, I am a Gallup certified strengths coach and a certified life coach. And I help people achieve their potential with science-backed tools and strategies and coaching.
And for those that are meeting me for the first time, I am Jill Griffin. I am an executive coach. I am a CEO advisor, and I help people figure it out or figure out what is next. I also do a lot of team dynamics work going into your organizations and kind of helping your team unfuck themselves and really creating additional level of impact so we improve life in the workplace, that we increase well-being, and that we're helping leaders and the people they serve really show up differently. And both of us are super passionate. I'm a certified life coach. I'm also a certified Gallup strengths coach. I've got a bunch of others coaching related certifications. But for today's episode, that's what we're going to be tapping into. And let's get to it. Okay. So why don't you start, Lee, with one of the first trends you are seeing?
Okay. Well, one thing that has come up is the Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed that employees are staying in the workforce for longer. So right now they call it the 60-year career. Okay. So up until about this point, really careers have only been expected to last about 40 years. Now we're looking at 60 years. We're adding on a couple decades because people are living longer and they're working longer. So this has many implications, but one of the big ones, it means that career paths are going to be more varied. So we can expect that we're going to have breaks and changes in our lives that are going to affect our career. There's not going to be just this powering through and grinding out, in a job. Yeah, I know. In a job that you can't stand, like just go and keep doing it.
Get it done, make it happen. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because that is just going to lead straight to burnout. You just can't go that long. So people are really going to need to figure out where they derive the most job satisfaction so that they don't burn out and they can have a long career. But also it's going to wind up being the norm that we take a break. We need to balance our personal life. We need to get professional development, and lifelong learning is going to be more essential because if you imagine 60 years, I mean, you change as a person, right? And then also technology changes, the organization changes. So it's going to be more commonplace to return to school, to take classes, to up level. And it's going to look a little bit different.
I love that you said that because when we first started talking about this, and I vomited a little bit in my mouth about the idea of a 60-year career. But then when I really started thinking about it and then doing some, digging into the research, and Gallup has also come out saying that, for most years that the average retirement age is 62, that, if you're in this idea of a 60-year career, you're like, wait, what's the math here? Am I starting? What age am I starting at? But I think it's like, we're also imagining it based on today's standards, right? We've come out of the COVID bubble. We're still thinking about what does work look like. We've got various blends of remote work or, in on-premise work. I think what I would imagine around this 60-year career, and this is also self-advocacy, everybody who's listening, is to Lee's point, it's not 50, 60 hours a week for 60 years. There's reduction of hours. There's flexible hours, understanding that you really need to be thinking about your glide path towards retirement, right? Because if you also start, and we're not experts within finance, but if you're thinking about how you're saving for all of this and how you're managing your life, especially if you're having periods of time where perhaps you're not working, and we don't just mean because you're a parent and you might be taking care of an aging parent as much as caring for a new child. I think there's also data that we've seen on returnships. We know that Goldman Sachs has had a pretty successful returnship program, which are like brief internship-like periods where people come, whether they're out of a retirement or they're out of a pause, and really come in to assist and have sort of a co-mentorship. Obviously, there's a ton that the more experienced employee can learn from a new employee, but there's also equal amount of wisdom to be shared and management of, personalities and people and things that you learn only through time and wisdom that can also be shared with some of the younger workers. So I do think that there is a benefit there. But I also think it's important to think about, we're probably not going to be, meaning for us that are working, it'll be different. But for younger people who are coming up, it's probably not going to be a straight through line of education, work, retirement, right? There's going to be people zipping in and out of phases, maybe taking a year off to work a different type of job that allows you to have some travel in your life, right? So I think it's something that we need to keep our eyes and ears on, but thinking about not only sustainable income, but how are you investing? How are you adopting a mindset of growth and acquiring new skills? All the things that come up for me as I hear about this concept of a 60-year career.
Right. And right now, only 10% of Fortune 500 companies have return to work programs, but this number is going to be going up. And also it's just going to be more commonplace. It's not going to be as stigmatized when people take a break and come back.
Which is good, obviously for everyone. And I also think, as we were hearing where, a lot during the pandemic with some people called it the Great Resignation. I called it the Great Reassessment. As you're seeing people be less thrilled with working the way, you and I grew up, Lee, as working as 9 to 5. We're seeing less people thrilled with that. Companies still need to operate. So if younger people are looking for different ways of working early on in their career, we can also see how a returnship or more experienced workers might be also coming in and filling some of those positions. I think it begs the question that, if we're going to be working longer, what does that do to consumption? And I mean consumption of product. If we're working longer and making money still, are we consuming more as consumers? Really interesting philosophical things to think about, but more to come in time. But here's some of the initial things that we're seeing, which I think kind of jumps us into the next trend that we're seeing with around inflation, right? When we're talking about finance. So as inflation, clearly, again, we're talking at this through the lens of the United States. So if we have any global listeners, this is US centric. But as we're seeing inflation, the idea that we are seeing 12% merit increases replace cost of living increases. So that is definitely having, where cost of living was 3%, a lot of times, maybe 4%. So we're seeing the blend of it being called a merit and a cost of living increase, not a promotion, cost of living. What we're also seeing is that with the outpace of inflation, we have to think about how, as employees, those of us that are employees, how we can negotiate for ourselves in ways that aren't necessarily in hard, cold cash. Get it? You want cash. I want cash too. But if an employer is thinking, if I give you a 10, 15, 20% raise to keep up with inflation, I can't predict what's next year, even if I do forecasting and modeling, and that might feel really scary and then resulting in layoffs. So non-monetary asks or spot bonus type asks seems to be taking the hold. So what this looks like is, asking for professional development stipend, I've seen companies offer vacation stipends where they're not saying what they're going to do in 2024. They're talking about right now, they're giving you a $2,000 spot bonus to take a vacation, education, seminars, certificate programs, finding ways to ask for, yes, it still relates to money, but it doesn't mean that I have to give you the same amount of money next year, which is giving employers a little bit of a, right? They're thinking like, okay, we can keep people happy and go for benefits over salary. Again, I want salary too. I want to decide what I do with my money. But in the meantime, if this continues to become the trend and grows of what we are seeing, the non-monetary, non-direct payout asks like time off, vacation, professional development, coaching, those are the things that we're seeing as trends.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that is seen as very valuable now is just flexibility. And so just being able to offer that flexibility to an employee is something that's considered a benefit as well.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually that takes me into, it's a good segue into another issue that is coming up. Which is, it's the challenge of remote work. We've been in a situation now where we are doing more and more flexible work that's requiring more hybrid work, but we're seeing some consequences from working at home. And so organizations right now, they're just trying to shape their strategies to figure out what is the best way to have hybrid work, to give employees the flexibility. So the Gallup organization, they actually did a big study on this, which is, I think, super interesting. They revealed that 9 out of 10 employees prefer some degree of long-term remote flexibility. So 9 out of 10 prefer it, 8 out of 10 expect it. So when you are looking for a job now, or when you're looking to join an organization, one thing that people are looking for is that they're going to ask when they're interviewing, when they're assessing whether this is the right job for them, they're going to ask about flexibility and possibly about hybrid work. So Gallup then also, they wanted to find out, okay, what do people really want? So maybe they want hybrid work, but what does that look like? And so they found that the most preferred hybrid schedule is 2 days a week. And the most common days of work of the week that people want to work, if they have to choose, and I'm sure you can guess. Can you guess, Jill?
Which Fridays and Mondays.
Yes. People do not want to work on Mondays or Fridays. And they actually, the differential of mood, they measured the mood difference between someone's mood on a Sunday versus Monday. And you should just stay home. I mean, based on. So when Gallup looked at employee engagement, employees who came to work 3 days a week, they were the most engaged. So maybe people are saying that they want 2 days a week, but when they looked at, okay, what is actually working for the organization and for the team, they found that 3 days a week, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that winds up being the optimal amount of engagement and flexibility. But they also stress that if you want to make hybrid work, you want to involve the work teams and the departments, the individuals, you want to involve them in making the decision. So they found that 46% of hybrid employees are engaged at work when their team determines their hybrid work policy. So that is like probably the most engagement they have in terms of hybrid work.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that. And, data and stats is always good because where I'm going with it is self-advocacy. Look, we have a $30 billion asset class-ish that's called corporate real estate. And many organizations are still paying for that rent. And they have to figure out what they're doing with that. And I think it's going to mean more and more forced coming into work. So people have moved. You obviously, need to get an advisor. You need to get a coach. You need to figure it out, talk to a mentor or a friend as to how you're going to work within this. I was just speaking with a client this morning who, because of the corporate location changing. They will now have a 2-hour commute each way.
Oh my
So it's a
gosh.
4-hour commute. And lifestyle is not, there's not an opportunity right now to be moving, right? So
Wow.
ouch. So with that, really thinking about productivity time. And I think this is two things. Like, one, it's amazing to me that organizations haven't totally figured this out and haven't surveyed their employees and haven't understood, because I'm still hearing many stories of people going in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and being the only one there. So
Yes.
we don't want to work in states in which it feels like it's a police state in an office. But if you're going to tell people that they're coming into the office, there needs to be an understanding that you're actually coming into the office, or how culturally is that handled. Hearing that you're going into the office, but you're still spending the entire day on a Teams or a Zoom meeting because no one else came in, and there's the incentive. There really isn't an incentive. There's no cash and prizes at the end of the rainbow because you're coming in, you're getting the same treatment as others. So this is both for self-advocacy for yourself and also for hiring managers, employers. Like, come on, we've been in this bubble now for 3+ years. Figure it out. It's time. Bring in your employee resource group, bring in a way of working that figures out the balance between the needs of both. What I'm also hearing is that because employees consider hours spent commuting as part of their productivity, because if I'm on a train for an hour, I could technically do work if that's part of my self-advocacy of how I'm working, then we want to be thinking about a productivity and a value-based conversation, not about an hours-based conversation. Because a lot of the work, at least if I even think about myself, I was a strategist. I might be doing a ton of work that doesn't actually look like output because I'm doing the research. I'm doing that level of work where I can't show you what I've done in the day, but I'm still creating value. So you want to be thinking about a values-based conversation. And I don't believe that this challenge around remote work is changing anytime soon. I really think that it's going to flood through for the rest of the year. However, what I'm hearing from a lot of the big tech companies and a lot of the big employers out there is that they are going to use this argument as an additional reduction of staff. Oh, you don't want to come into the office 4 days a week, which is what it's probably going to go to, getting Fridays remote. Oh, you don't want to come in? Okay, so are you resigning? That is how they're going to use it to trim the bottom 5% or 5% of the staff without actually having a layoff, which means they also don't have to pay unemployment because you opted to not come into the office. So again, this is a time where we just want to be real and we want to tell you what we're hearing. And this is obviously not a blanket experience for everyone. There are nuances within every market, but this is the time for self-advocacy, which I think brings us into the next topic, which is around shifting from doing and skills-based into impact. So closing that out, if you're showing the impact that you're driving, perhaps it won't be a blanket experience, but for you personally, perhaps your own commuting, being in the office experience works differently. What we're also seeing is that there's been so much emphasis lately on the last few years on upskilling and training and understanding that we need to make sure our more experienced workers are trained and our younger workers need to be trained on emotional IQ and managerial skills and collaboration. And our older, more experienced workers need to be trained on technology, which of course I call bullshit because I think that there are plenty of workers that I think it's just a trope that we keep putting out there. That said, finding that glide path to impact and victory of what you're doing is really, really important. So here's what it looks like. You're going to get skills and training because you have a degree or a certification or a master's. That's awesome and amazing. And hopefully it increases your salary because you've done that. But knowing how to actually apply those skills with continued uncertainty in the marketplace and how you're performing and doing results is where you're creating impact. That's the difference. So it's not just, oh, you can perform in perfect conditions. It's how are you performing in a continued volatile environment and constantly changing environments and creating impact. So when someone says to you, what did you do with your job? You're not just saying like, here was the challenge I had and here's what I did. It's here's the challenge, here's what I did, and here's the impact I created. Lee, did you have something to add?
Yeah. So I was going to say also when you are between jobs or if you're transitioning out of the workforce or into the workforce and you're collecting certifications, maybe you're taking online classes or you're learning these new skills, you're up-leveling your skills. be sure, like you just said, Jill, to find opportunities to use these skills. So you do not have to be employed by someone in order to use these freshly learned skills.
Really important.
Reach out to your friends, your networks, or organizations that you really enjoy, or that you aspire to work, and start getting to work before you're getting paid. I mean, it can be something that you can talk about in your job interview. If you're doing a project you can be doing a project for a friend. Say that you want to be a web developer. Start working on your friend's website. Get experience, on the ground experience outside of that class that you just took, and so that you can talk about it when you are looking to up-level yourself into a new career.
Yeah, I love that. And what I would pull through is get the experience because you volunteered helping the local animal shelter rebuild their website, and then talk about the impact. The impact of that meant X% more pet adoptions, X% more pets were neutered or spayed, right? Pull it through to the impact, because if we're waiting for the recruiter or the person who's looking at the resume reviewer to get the story from what you're telling, they're busy. They're looking at like 30 or 40 resumes an hour or LinkedIn profiles an hour. You're going to have to feed them that impact, both in the initial search conversation and then in the actual job interview, telling the complete story, tell the complete sentence of the impact that you drove.
Yes. Explain your accomplishment. What was the result of that website that you built? Add data, numbers catch the eye, and make something real.
Awesome. So our second to last trend is that we're seeing the impact of AI on hiring. So this is not new. We see this with the ATS, the applicant tracking software, the applicant tracking system. It's called different things. There is an inherent bias in these. And we need to make sure that the way to get around bias is, one, we need to be hiring people who are contributing to creating OpenAI and contributing to creating within that ATS, that it is a non-biased software, which is inherently is going to be impossible, right? But one, for people hiring out there, we need to make sure it's balanced. And two, for you, as the job seeker, it's going to come back to, one, making sure that your resume is built with the latest on SEO, search engine optimization, because everything you put in your resume is then put on your LinkedIn profile. And that is where the search comes in, right? LinkedIn is the 5th largest search engine. So you want to make sure that the way you're getting around some of these things is you're having the key words and phrases that really drive home. Understanding that the AI is going to continue to have an impact on what it is that we're doing. It's also going to have an impact on jobs, right? But I like to think of AI as like Chat GPT, which everybody's talking about, right? Like, I like to think about it as a conversation that you're having with Chat GPT in order to get the best out of it, versus it totally understanding that it's going to be cutting jobs. It will absolutely impact jobs, especially in the hiring process. I can see it really impacting HR, data entry, employee records management. I can see it really, making sure that HR has the right information can also be done through using some of this open AI technology. So that's helpful, but also having an impact on those human-based jobs. Again, the way around it is making sure that you have tight networking. And even if you don't know people in the company, like, how can you reach out to someone who works there and really find a way to make a connection? I also want to talk about, just in the last week, Casey Newton, who has the Substack, which I subscribe to, it's awesome, that he just talked about how Microsoft laid off one of its responsible AI teams. And this is the ethics and society team. It's gone. So what happens there is that if members of the ethics and society team, they try to be supportive of product development, but they also talk about, the nuances in language and how something could be discriminatory or biased. If that's not there, the actual mechanisms and the people that are creating the technology, it's something to watch for. So keep an eye on that as we continue to hear things. We'll talk about it too, but it's important for you within your organizations to also be voicing to make sure that these tools that are being used for hiring are not biased.
Right. And, in terms of networking, I was just talking to Jill a little bit ago about don't use Chat GPT when you're networking on LinkedIn.
So I'm going to make Lee tell you briefly the story without mentioning names. This is like the worst. Go ahead, Lee, tell them.
Well, I'm not going to offend anybody because it was a bot. So
right, there you go.
No feelings will be hurt. No, just someone reached out. I try to be I love LinkedIn. I think it's a fantastic place to meet people and to make connections. I think it's a great way to get your foot in the door of an organization that you're excited about, that you love. And I am always open to talking to people. And I got a message, it was just a couple of days ago, of connection request, and I accepted the request. And then boom, the very first message that was asked me it just wasn't like the first question you would ask me. I think the first thing I'm going to call her a she because she's posing as a she, said was, oh gosh, I should read it to you guys. Anyway, she said, "Can you tell me how to increase employee engagement and loyalty at your company?" And I thought, okay, your company, my company, what?
Right.
But I thought, oh, who knows? Like maybe she's an upper level manager or leader, and it looked like she was. And sure, I'm happy to help her out. So I just listed off a few things. And then her response was obviously like the person had cut and pasted it into Chat GPT. Like, how do you respond to this? And it was a computer. It was such a bot answer. And I just said, and it's still, sucker me. I'm not a sucker. Was kind of curious. I said, so I'm glad this helped. I said, I'm happy this helped so-and-so, and then another Chat GPT response. And I thought, you know what? I just need to tell people, don't do this. Like, what if, because you might think that this is a really easy way to connect with a ton of people on LinkedIn and to make yourself sound really smart, like you know what they're doing. And at this state of the game, Chat GPT, we can still tell it's a bot. So be your authentic self, even if it means that it might take you a little bit longer to script that message to that person. Just be you. That's the best way to be. And people really appreciate authenticity. And last, just the one thing I wanted to talk about is there were buzzwords that came out in 2022. I'm sure you've all heard of quiet quitting. Quiet quitting, that's basically when you put in the minimum amount of work required, put in no more time or effort or enthusiasm than what has been required. And then the people were talking about, well, there's also quiet firing. And Jill, you kind of focused on this. And that is when the manager or leaders, they just kind of let you quiet quit. They recognize this. And I think it's often in response to the quiet quitting is they let you dig your own grave. They don't give you any feedback. They don't give you any coaching or development until you decide that you will quit. And really what these are buzzy phrases for what Gallup has been studying for a long time, which is really employee engagement. And that is the involvement and enthusiasm that people have for their work. So research by the Gallup organization, they revealed that employee engagement has been declining over the past 2 years. And that's a bit of a surprise. I mean, well, you'd think we know that so much upheaval with the pandemic, but for the 10 years before the pandemic, it was rising every year. So now the pandemic has hit and it is dropping right now. 32% of employees say that they're engaged at work. And Gallup went the extra step just to find out why. They asked that question. Why are people quiet quitting? Why are they quiet firing? Why do we not have this engagement? And they found out that it was because expectations were no longer clear. So some of what we've talked about in this episode so far in terms of just what's the organization's expectation for a work schedule or work output or commuting or, all that goes on in terms of hybrid work. Also, they felt disconnected from the mission or purpose of the organization. They lacked opportunities to grow and learn, and employees, they just didn't feel cared about at work. So what leaders can do is they can focus on clarifying expectations. They can clearly communicate the organization's culture and value and strategies, and really try to be in touch with the work-life challenges of people. And that goes back to mastering the hybrid schedule. If no one is in the office, it's really hard to do all of those things. So I think we're going to find in this next year, I think we're going to find organizations really, really getting creative and coming up with ways to create engagement, keep employees in the know about the company's culture, and also finding ways to connect together as human beings, because we do need those connections, and finding a way to feel like employees are really being cared about by their organizations.
It's great. One thing I would add to that, because Lee spoke a lot about what the organization should do, and I would now talk to the employee. From an employee standpoint, here's the thing. You received payment, potentially health insurance, for a job description. That's the deal, right? This is what you're going to do, and they're going to give you this. And I hope that there is advancement. I hope that there, again, are opportunities, and it's stimulating your brain. Not everybody needs to be passionate about their work, right? We're not going to steal either, right? If someone's paying for our time, we're going to show up and give it our all within that time. But I would also offer you, if you're in a job that is really just about the benefits and the salary, there is nothing wrong with that. You could find passion outside your work. Why am I telling you this? Because if the idea of this is what I'm willing to contribute to this job and this role, and to do an honest work and honest pay and, do the best I can, but my passion lies outside of this, and you're okay with that, that's great. So really think about then, what is it that you're willing to contribute? How are you getting involved? How are you showing up for the after school activities that a lot of companies try to do for employment and creating morale situations? So really just think through, if your passion does not lie within the job that you're doing, it doesn't have to. That's okay. Passions can be outside. But how do you want to choose how you're still showing up, and then being conscious about what you're doing and the result that you're creating, and what you're doing with the rest of your mental bandwidth and your actual physical bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jill. Yes.
So that, my friends, thanks for staying with us, wraps what we're seeing right now, the 60-year career, the idea of the quiet quitting and the quiet firing, and how it's really about engagement, really thinking about in this marketplace, how benefits will be more easily awarded versus incremental salary in the current inflationary mindset, the challenges of remote work, and shifting from the idea of just doing and moving to skills and the actual impact that you're creating. And then last, all of us being on alert of the amazing coolness within AI and programs like ChatGPT, but also being incredibly aware of the inherent bias that is in there, both within AI and within the employee tracking and hiring softwares. So Lee, thanks for doing this again with me. Perhaps we'll have another check-in later this year.
Yes.
That we have. But thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you listening. And as always, here's to possibility. Hey, thanks for listening to the Career Refresh podcast. If you're enjoying this and you want more information, go to my website, jillgriffincoaching.com. There you can find information on how to work with me one-on-one, or my group programs, or even bring me into your workplace. I'll put the link to my website in the show notes. But hey, listen, before you go, do me a favor, rate and review this podcast, because it definitely helps me get the word out to people everywhere so that they can also thrive in the workplace. All right, friends, I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.